A federal judge has now granted the Department of Justice permission to release transcripts of a grand jury investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of underage girls in Florida. It's a case that ended without any federal charges ever being filed against the sex offender. U.S. District Judge Rodney Smith saying that a recently passed federal law ordering the release of records related to Epstein overrode the usual rules about grand jury secrecy. President Trump, you may remember, signed the law in November. Now, there is a lot to this here, so I do want to bring in Jeremy Paul, professor of law at Northeastern University, to help break it down. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. And first off, the big question that I do want to ask you, how significant of a move is this to release those transcripts?
I would say that it's significant in the sense that it starts the ball rolling in what will be many, many more releases. But I would not expect this particular release of information, the one from Florida, to have a lot of new individual bits of information for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the Department of Justice itself requested to be able to release this material, which suggests that they don't think there's that much in there that will be damaging. And secondly, a lot of this material has already been made public as part of some of the civil suits brought by the victims. But even though there won't be necessarily one big piece of blockbuster disclosure, it's kind of like a crossword puzzle. You know, you fill in another letter, all of a sudden something that was unclear becomes clear, and it could turn out to be somewhat like that.
Do we know when these transcripts will be released? Is there a timeline or anything of that nature, or is this just so fresh that we really don't know?
Well, there is a timeline. The Congress passed that statute that you referenced in your opening, the Epstein File Transparency Act, which gave the government a 30-day window, which I think ends on the 19th of December. So we should see something by then because the judge relied heavily on that statute.
How does the court kind of balance all of this when you're talking about transparency and protecting victims' privacy when deciding what to unseal and what to reveal? Because it's important to note that one of the objections we've heard from a lot of lawmakers and other folks is that you're going to have victims' information that could be in the files. So how do you kind of balance that?
Well, that is a great question. And in this case, we are in somewhat uncharted territory. Normally, it's the defense or some other group that's seeking release of grand jury transcripts. Here, it's the Department of Justice itself which sought to release this. And so they're in charge in the first instance of deciding what to release and what not to release. We can hope that the judge will take a look at this before decisions are made. It is exactly as you say, a tough balance. Certainly no victims' names should be released in this disclosure. But it's more than just names because sometimes you might disclose locations or particular facts, which would make it easier for, enterprising investigators outside the government to piece together things and figure out who the victims are. So careful attention must be paid. It is a balance. Hopefully we can count on the DOJ to be very careful because certainly they don't want to release anything that's going to further inflame the situation.
And Professor Paul, I do want to pull up some of these images that were actually released here by Democrats just a few days ago. They're quote unquote unseen photos from Epstein's Island this week. Now, from a legal perspective, does anything in these images here, any of the video, stand out or add any kind of context?
Well, it certainly adds the context of shining a bright light on how much wealth Mr. Epstein had accumulated, and therefore raises significant questions about how he got all that wealth in order to be able to perpetrate many of the crimes of which he's alleged to have done. But going back to your previous very sound question about privacy, to the extent that those photos correspond to testimony, someone says, I was in a room that looked like such and such, and then you can see in the photo the room looked that way, it could make it slightly more easy to identify who these people are. But mostly the main context is just, it displays the extravagant wealth Epstein had, and that's something that we all want to know where he got all that money.
And Ghislaine Maxwell is saying that the release of some of these files, transcripts, things of that nature could actually impact her appeal. Is there any legal basis for that argument?
Well, yes. Here's what she's saying. She has informed the courts that she plans to petition for a new trial. She has not yet explained what her basis for doing so is. But what she is saying is if she succeeds in that, and I would predict that she will not, but if she does succeed at that, if this material is released, the material from her grand jury, and remember um, the situation we're talking about now was an order from a judge in Florida about cases that took place between 2005 and 2007. There are two more judges looking at similar requests, one of which is in the Maxwell case. That's Judge Engelmeyer in New York. And what she is saying is that if this material is released, then potential jurors might see some of it, and that might prejudice them so that she couldn't get a fair trial if she were able to get a second trial, which I don't think she will be able to do.
All right, Professor Jeremy Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and helping to discuss all this further. Again, there is a lot to it, so we really appreciate you breaking it all down. Anything we missed? Anything else that you think is worth adding here before I let you go?
Well, I'm a legal expert, not a politician, and so I don't have a lot to add about the politics. But I would say that this entire fiasco could have been significantly reduced if Attorney General Bondi hadn't come on national television and said, "I have these files sitting on my desk," and then when asked to release them, said, "Oh no, there weren't so many files." So, this is something of a situation that is of the administration's own making.
All right, Jeremy Paul, thank you again for taking the time to join us. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You take care.